There's a gentleman in the front that talked about the Ukrainian diaspora and how important they were to the story. But I was thinking about the Chinese diaspora and also I suppose there are smaller Kazakh diasporas in Turkey maybe. Is an alternative source, because all panels been talking about difficulty accessing documents, and some reticence in getting oral histories. But I was wondering with diasporas like the Chinese diaspora or the Kazakh diasporas, has anybody looked at those as sources? Or?
I interviewed a number of survivors in Hong Kong. Many of them escaped to Hong Kong in 1962, at the end of the famine, or towards the end of the famine. So I think these were actually the biggest group because other Chinese diaspora left China in different circumstances. So, yeah, many of them might not have experienced the famine.
Well, just one point about that too that I think is perhaps different from the Ukrainian experience is that letters weren't able to travel within China during the famine. In fact, there's an excellent document in Professor Zhou's book which talks about a provincial women's federation head trying to get a letter describing the conditions in Xinjiang up to someone she knew in northern China to tell him what was going on, and the letter got stopped, correct? So it was very little communication within China, even among leaders who were at the provincial level. So having letters go outside of China was.
Anyone want to address this, the first question about empire and the ethnological question?
Yeah, I'll speak to that. Thank you. I was just saying to Nico, it's nothing like having the big question, leaving the big question until the end. It's a really important question, a very difficult one, of course. Something I've been thinking about quite a bit, and this gets to the first point that our discussant made with regards to comparisons, because I think it's very important to compare and to figure out what is really specific here to what's going on. So, I mean, I have been reading and looking at a lot of studies of, say, imperial rule over nomads in other territories. And I am struck really by some of the commonalities, but also some of the differences. One thing that I noticed, and this is not a unique conclusion, it's been repeated in the literature before, but was the amount of effort that the Soviets put into their nation-making projects. And I think this is really interesting, particularly when you look at the subject of nomads. For instance, I've been reading a really interesting study by a British scholar who's looking at a British imperial rule over many of the nomads in nomadic groups in the Middle East. And these scholars really had debates at the time period saying, nationality, that's not a category that can apply to nomads. We should leave them alone, we should leave them be. But really the Soviets were much more intrusive in how they tried to apply that and how they tried to transform nomadic societies. I think, another perhaps emphasis that's really different in the Soviet case is also the idea of productivity and Marxist-Leninist notions of efficiency, of producing a surplus, and so on. So if you look again at say, some of the ways that the British tried to rule nomadic populations, they often think about the fact that these areas needed to become productive, that they needed to create kind of a surplus. So it's a very difficult question, a very thorny question, but those are some of my thoughts on it so far.
Okay.
Yeah. So yes, also on the empire, I think that you have to bear in mind that the Kazakhstan at the end of the 1920s, at the beginning of the 1930s, was a society where there was a strong legacy of Tsarist, we can call colonial power in the region, in the sense that the Kazakhs were very much underrepresented in the administrations, and so among those who were managing the concrete policies that were coming from Moscow, the Kazakhs were definitely a minority, less than 20% in the central government apparatus at the middle 1920s. So there was an imperial legacy that had an impact about how the tragedy of the famine unfolded, in my opinion. And I agree that really we have to bear in mind also differences. So the fact that there was a clear plan of including the Kazakhs into the state as Soviet citizens was an important factor. So, and this happened exactly at the end of the 1920s and at the beginning of the 1930s, not only for the Kazakhs, but also for other Central Asian populations. So until the 1928, Central Asians were exempted, for instance, from the draft, from the army. Only in 1928, the Kazakhs, it was the first draft of the Kazakhs into the army, and for the other populations of Central Asia in the early 1930s. So there was a distance of the Kazakhs from the state that had an impact about the scale of the famine, of the tragedy, I think. But also was a distance that was being kind of closed by the policies of the Soviet state. So yeah, I think that the kind of ideal type of empire that we have in mind can be applied to the situation, but also the ideal type of an inclusive state trying to include. So there are two things, there are two aspects that have to be kept in mind, both, and that make the Soviet or Stalinist experience in Central Asia so peculiar, I think.
Okay, thank you very much. And I think, I can't help because as someone who works on empire, I actually think that the empire questions should be taken seriously by scholars who work on China as well. Because when we think about famines, think about labor extractions, one could actually make an argument about eternal colonialism. So actually we could raise a different kind of methodological question that bring back to the whole all the scholarship that work on empire. So in other words, that is the so-called standard empire, but there are all kinds of questions that could be engaging this empire question. Anyway, in any case, so despite this really beautiful day out there, I'm very pleased I'm here listening to those wonderful papers and the conversation here, and I'm sure that you feel exactly the same. And so thank you very much.
We invite you all at 7 for Professor Biancho's public lecture in this room on how Soviet and Chinese communists dealt with the peasantry in comparison.